Welcome to Day One Patch Media. Glad to have Jamie and Clive here from Tiny Mob Games. How you guys doing today?
Hey guys, we're doing great. We've just literally got our game ready for Canada launch, so we're feeling a bit crispy around the edges, but we're also feeling very excited as well.
And so, yeah, the game you're talking about is Tiny Realms for the iPad and iPhone, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so
This is our first game under Tiny Mob Games.
yeah, okay then. So first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself and like what is your role at Tiny Mob Games?
So I'm the game director, one of the founders as well at the studio. So we founded the studio a little under a year ago. Myself, Alex Mendeleev, who's the CEO, and Chris Hofkin is the CTO. And I think collectively we have like 40 plus years of games industry experience. We're kind of old school kind of guys. We love the kind of classic games. And kind of my background, I kind of just under 20 years of experience working at companies like Microprose, Interplay, Hasbro Interactive, and a bunch of other companies, Electronic Arts, Disney. But my kind of roots is really in kind of RTS games and the strategy games that I did when I was at Microprose. Those are the kind of games that I love to play personally. And as we started to set up this company, kind of one of the things we wanted to do was, what kind of games do we love to play? And let's make the kind of games that we inherently have a big heart to kind of explore and expand out from the current genre of games on iOS.
So yeah, you're saying this is an RTS. So how are you using like your inspirations to kind of design Tiny Realms?
Yeah, I look back at games like there's a whole bunch of games in there. There's like the StarCraft is the classic one that everyone will know. Then there's games like Syndicate way back when. That was a great strategy game. XCOM as well. So there's resource management kind of features from those games, upgrades from those kind of games, and also the controls as well. We wanted to make a game on iOS that really utilized more of the kind of the touch and move controls, actually give you full control of the units. So we created something called Warpath, which allows you to fully move units around the environment and choose your target strategically, which we found that a lot of the iOS games out there right now, which are really, really strong in their own right, but they're not kind of hitting that kind of RTS mark that we wanted to hit.
Mm-hmm. So what makes kind of like the iOS platform with the iPad and iPhone, what's special about that kind of helps enhance Tiny Realms?
The touch controls, I think having it there in the palm of your hand, holding your iPad or your iPhone, and just being able to like see the battlefield from a kind of afar, if you like. You can kind of zoom out, see the battlefield, and you can have full control moving units around. Simple touch controls. One thing we wanted to do early on, we know that on the iOS there's a whole bunch of different types of gamers out there. So there's your casual gamers that don't necessarily want to have that full control, and there's other players that will just want to touch. And then select a target kind of controls. And then there's also the hardcore RTS players that want full control, where they want to kind of draw out the lines of where they want the units to move and think very strategically about their battles. And we cater for every one of those. And that was one of the big things we wanted to do. And the nice thing with the iOS as well is just the sheer number of users on there. So and getting people into the game and kind of getting that feedback early on is going to be very, very important to how we continue to build and expand upon the current experience.
Okay, great. So, as you said, Tiny Mob's first game, of course, is Tiny Realms. So let's kind of maybe jump into that. I know you have a couple summaries and some articles on your website about that, but can you, like, for anyone who's listening right now, what is Tiny Realms? Can you give us sort of maybe like a story outline or something to that effect?
Sure. So Tiny Realms, free-to-play action strategy game set in a fantasy world. So the world is all created through ourselves here. We wanted to think about different types of factions that were battling together or against each other. But the world essentially is an ancient world that was once ruled by this godlike race called the Summoners. And what they generally do is they go to different planets and they cultivate the planets and work benevolently with the kind of the species on there to better the lands. And so what happened is that basically the summoners fell out with each other. A catastrophic war occurred where the world, I don't know if you've seen the artwork, but the world splits in two. Essentially, at this point, the world no longer spins on its axis. So there's a perpetual world of realm of light and a perpetual realm of darkness. And right now we've opened up the realm of light as one part of the game, but we have this whole other part of the world that we can potentially explore as well with the realm of darkness, and we've already kind of fleshed out there the types of factions, the types of creatures and groups that live on that side of the planet. But essentially what happened after the war is the summoners fell from grace, so to speak. They no longer had the godlike powers that they once had. So it was really the rise of the mortals at that point. So the humans, the dwarves, and the Toghill, which is a lizard-type race, they started to kind of battle out for parts of the land and to make sure that they had either control or the will to survive amongst each other. And so the first part of the story is really the factions, is the mortals being left by the gods to figure out how to look after the world and how to chop up the world. And it ties into a lot of history that we've seen in the past where wars have occurred through different factions on our planet. So we wanted to kind of tie in that struggle at the early stages of a new world forming.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a pretty in-depth story you have going on. How important is story to you in terms of like narrative in games and more importantly, I guess, in mobile games?
I think it's very important that even if you don't want to expose the full story to the player in every intricate little detail, it's very important that you as a developer and makers of the game really understand the world. So that's one of the things we wanted to do early on, is we created a massive canon that told the entire history of the world, all the different parts of the timeline, and then we're going to expose some of that to the player in the game. So it's really up to the player. They can go a little bit more in depth if they want to, but if they just want to play that kind of core RTS experience and not get too caught up in the story, they also have that option as well.
Well, that sounds really great because story is really important to me when I play games. It's really what I kind of care about. So this sounds pretty exciting.
And it's pretty awesome too that you guys, even though it is an iOS game, which a lot of people, of course, view as sort of, just quick jump in and play. It's really great that like people who love story, like Ryan especially, and myself, I do enjoy story as well. That you can kind of jump in and kind of quickly play, but you can also kind of dive into the story as well. So that sounds really great.
Yeah, I think the one thing that games aren't doing a great job of right now is giving a great story to the users and then letting them evolve that story over time, and their actions in the game evolve the story. And that's one of the things that we're very conscious of and we're always thinking about. So that might be a little teaser into how we're going to start to expose more of the story to the player over time.
Right, that sounds great. The free to play model. I know you guys said it's going to be, of course, free to play. You're going to be free to download. Where do you see the future of free to play games going? Why did you choose that model, and that sort of thing?
Free to play is, I mean, as it says in the name, it's free to play the game. You don't need to pay to play the game, and there will be the power players that want to pay that little bit extra to kind of get to where they want to be quicker. But our game's designed to allow players to play the game for free. If they want to progress to the game, there's nothing holding you back in the game. The RTS experience is skill based, so the better you are at the game, the quicker you will progress. But that was important to us because it gets users into the game. It gets us to have hopefully a big audience that can community around the different factions that can play within it. And I think as you said, it's kind of the free to play space is already kind of starting to somewhat move into consoles and console games, but the production value of those games is so high that I think it's going to take a while for them to potentially get to a point where they're going to have an exclusive or I guess completely free to play experience. I can see them for a long period of time actually having the episodic content continuing and added value features that can be purchased, but you're probably going to still end up spending similar to what you pay already for the console games if you really want the full experience. I think it's just the nature of the beast with consoles. Unfortunately, the cost to actually develop on those platforms, if you really want to be in the top 10, you're looking at massive budgets and production values, which needs to obviously they need to make some return on that to be able to continue to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, the Tiny Realms is kind of made up of you have the linear quests, which your main story, and then the non-linear quests. What can we kind of expect to see from both the main story and the side quests?
Well, initially on the main story, you'll experience what's happening in the very early stages after the split. So the world split in two, and one of the other factions in there is the orcs. And there's actually two types of orcs in the game, but we're introducing the first type of orc early on, and they essentially become scavengers. They were part of the faction that was fighting against the good summoners, so to speak. So they've basically been left on this side of the planet to fend for themselves. Nobody obviously wants them there. So they're basically causing trouble. So you're pushing those guys back towards a region called Black Crest. And so you're kind of the initial kind of linear quests are all surrounded that part of the experience. And I think the key thing here is there's going to be more and more of this linear quests unraveling over time. This is just the very, very first chapter. And then the side quests, you get to meet characters, and these are kind of individuals that you'll meet from the different other factions, the humans, the Toghill, and the dwarves. And you actually they all have their own personalities and their own desires of what they want. And so they'll be giving you quests that you can potentially take. And the one thing to bear in mind is if you take these quests, there will be consequences. So if you take quests, if you're a dwarven faction and you take quests that kind of end up with you attacking a dwarven settlement somewhere, which you can do, your reputation with that faction will go down, and that goes across the board as well. So having a relationship with and a reputation will make a difference to how either you get attacked in the future or how you'll be supported by the other factions when the time comes.
Okay, so that kind of leads into our next question, actually.
Yeah, so I was reading on your blog that kind of like what you're building onto, how characters can approach you in the nonlinear and sort of ask you to do things, and I get, like you said, attack. Like if you're a dwarven, you can attack a dwarven settlement. Off of these quests though, will they be dynamically generated, or kind of random requests that come in, or will we see are they more linear in their own right as well? They're just not more directed to the story, or how does that dynamic sort of work?
Initially, they're all scripted, so we've actually written them all out and exactly how we wanted them. But there will be, I think the one thing that I mentioned earlier is for our worldwide launch, we do want to get to the point where we have dynamic quests in the experience, and these will be managed through how the collective number of users in the game, how they take on the quest and what the overall results are. This will kind of skew how we continue to add more content to the game. So that's going to be really exciting for me to kind of start to develop and put into the game. So, for example, if you guys are playing as the dwarves and the dwarves have a bunch of successful quests on a day-to-day basis, there'll be a shift of power throughout the realm, and this will be conveyed in a persistent universe.
Okay, so you have the single-player story, but then you also have multiplayer. Tell us how that kind of works.
Multiplayer, so we have the classic player versus player experience, and it's asynchronous, where you can, if you want to, you can go off and you can attack a friend. You can literally look through and see which friends you want to kind of work or fight against, and you can do that in the game. But the multiplayer experience is really embedded within the entire game. So the quest system is designed to allow for players to play collectively. They may not be playing directly with each other on the battlefield, but they'll be able to contribute to each other's experience. So going back to that persistent universe, that multiplayer string is really embedded deep in that experience. So
we also kind of building up that again. So we saw that Tiny Realms was, of course, submitted to the Canadian App Store. Are there any plans in the future? I know you guys are doing a global launch, but are there any plans to sort of bring it to other platforms so you can sort of expand that multiplayer, that multiplayer playing ground, or what's happening with that?
We're definitely looking at other platforms. We've developed the game on Unity, which allows us to move to other platforms very, very quickly. But we do want to build a strong iOS base to start with. We have a whole bunch of content we want to build into the game, and there will become a the right moments where we have enough of the game in the products live, so we can then think about other platforms. But initially, we've still got a lot of work to do in terms of new features that we're really excited about putting into the game, and those are the things that we really want to focus on right now. But yeah, other platforms are still on the table at this point for sure.
Okay, so in the overall industry, it seems like indie developers are really taking off. Do you guys consider yourselves as an indie developer? And then, if so, what does that mean for yourselves?
Yeah, we definitely consider ourselves as independent developers. For me, it's we're not tied to a publisher. We're not tied to anyone else. Every decision we make in the studio is ours to make, and we either live on our success or failures, but at least we can make those decisions. Coming from the game space for the last 20 years, you don't get that. You always have a publisher that you're tied to that often pulls a lot of the decisions away from you. So for me, independent development is that you, as the developers, you get to kind of own the vision. You get to really kind of drive it, and it's your product. And that to me is indie development. You don't have anyone else kind of supporting you or working alongside you. It's your baby.
Mm-hmm. So it does seem like it's kind of exploding right now. So I guess it's great for everyone, even for the big publishers and stuff. Because as people say, like, the rising tide lifts all ships. So it's all great gaming, and we all love it.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, going back 20 years, there was like the bedroom programmers or the basement programmers that would write. One guy would write a game. So going way back in the day, it was like Chris Sawyer would do things like Transport Tycoon, and then we had Jeff Crammond in the UK that did the Formula One games and Microprose, like one guy in a basement. And then it kind of went to like smaller teams on PS1, and then the PS2 came along, then Xbox 360, PS3. And you're looking at like 100 people teams, and the intimacy you can have with a product and kind of just having a team that just, are all kind of invested in making a product for themselves. I think we're getting back to that point where we were 20 years ago, where individuals can go off and do amazing things. So yeah, I think the industry right now is really exciting.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny, we're seeing like big publishers like Ubisoft create not necessarily independent games, but independent with Child of Light they just released I think last month or so. So it seems like they're trying to capture in on this indie market as well.
Yeah, and I think gamers appreciate those kind of games as well. So you can see why publishers, they want to move away from I think it's also that you can do some amazing products with smaller number of people, rather than these kind of big budget products that you really have to have success out the door. Otherwise, they don't go any further. So I think there's probably an element of that strategy in there, as well as knowing that I think this is something that our audience really loves to kind of, or really admires and loves to play.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you. Any idea when we might be able to see Tiny Realms available?
Well, on the Canadian store, it will be there very, very soon. So we've submitted, and then worldwide, we have a bunch of features that we want to get done. So we're still looking, a good couple of months out from here. But we're very excited to kind of build out this game and get it in front of people as soon as possible.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us here on Day One Patch Media. It was great. I'm really excited for Tiny Realms when it comes out. I can't wait personally.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to jump on that.
The trailer really looked really good. So thank you.
Thank you very much for sitting down with us today.
Guys. Thank you very much for having us on.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Oh, no problem. That was great.
Be able to talk about the game at last.
Yeah. Okay, so Tiny Realms, it's available soon on iOS, so it'll be on your iPad and iPhone. So yeah, thank you again, and thanks.
Cheers, guys. Have a great day.
Yeah, see you later.